It's great to start the year with so many of my personal goals achieved by virtue of welcoming so many people in person and online. I would love us at the end of the year to look like this every Sunday morning. And it's kind of up to us, I suspect, to do something that is so spectacular that you come, and up to you that you're so faithful that you do come. So let us carry on with joy. It's my delight to welcome all of you in person and online to this life of the parish and its auspicious day on the feast of the baptism of Christ. We almost couldn't find a better feast day to launch this long-range plan. It is our first since the pandemic, a plan that contains the vision of a growing parish membership whose discipleship, which is to say, whose felt experience of the presence of God at work in their lives and in the world, deepens through this parish that exists as a school of prayer and service in the Lord. The forums in January are focused on governance. The next 2 Sundays, we will meet those wonderful people who are standing for vestry as lay leaders already in the parish to make, in that final Sunday of January at our annual general meeting, the conclusion of our voting for them in person and online, and receiving that annual report of the rector, our treasurer, and our wardens. The long-range plan is conceived in this vestry over a great period of time. First led by Rob Bowman as senior warden in 2022. Its creation in 2023 is one of the key outcomes of vestry in this past year through the leadership of Bernadette Gardner as senior warden. Bernadette was a hardworking member of this committee and is sorry she cannot be with us this morning. She'll catch us online, as many others will, and already 45 or more are even live. The 10-page core of the plan and the full version of it with its appendices are on the website on an easy-to-read flipbook format found in that About Us button. The Long-Range Planning Committee Chair was Louis Thane, who is with us in the blue tie, and will lead with his gifts and experience as past president of Lebanon Valley College, and incredibly, as well as unexpectedly, interim president of St. Michael's College in Burlington, Vermont, for much of the time of this work. So, Louis, I'm very grateful to you and to Dory for the love, work, and care that your household has invested in this project along with you. Our senior warden designate is Gene Clark, and he is here and will offer further reflections after Louis on how the long-range plan will be used and implemented. As rector, I have been blessed to have Jean, Rob, and Bernadette help me to build my capacity for strategic thinking and planning. I know Nicolette in her new role as parish executive, and Mother Shana feel the same way. Jean will build on the work of Elena Woolman as junior warden, Bernadette and Rob and the vestries that they have led as we live into this plan. Let me conclude by thanking those members of the committee whose work forms literally the basis of my excitement and prayers at the start of this new year of ministry for us all. They are Carrie Bolton, Jean Clark, Bernadette Gardner, John Hershey, Marianne Murata, Nicolette Norris, Virginia Robinson, Michael Schmid, Kit Slough, Louis Thane, and Drew Hermeling, our editor. I was meant to be on the committee too, but with a year of almost entirely absent illness, I am just wanting to give thanks to this parish, your vestry, the committees of it, the clergy and the staff team who did this work and so much else beside without a rector as proof of the broad-based health and wealth and talent of this parish that it has received from God in the power of the Holy Spirit. So with that, I hand you over to the chairperson, Louis Thane, who will take us through the report. I hope you all have a couple of pages of stapled paper, and those in the Zoom room will receive those as slides on your screen. You don't need to do anything to receive them at home. Louis.
Well, dear friends, thank you for being here this morning. Those of you in the room and those of you who are on Zoom, I'm very grateful to see you all. Special thanks to Nancy Levesser and for Chris for the assistance of getting this up on the web and the technical assistance this morning. I am going to spend the next few minutes talking about the 2024 long-range plan, process of how we arrived at the plan, and the elements that we see as most important. Before I begin, I want to add my thanks to David's for the members of the Long Range Planning Committee. It was a joy to work with you. Thank you so much for saying yes to my initial request to join the committee. Thank you for your contributions to St. James and to the work that we did together. If there's one thing I learned over the course of the year about our congregation, it is that we have an extraordinarily deep pool of talented people who care about this church, what we do, and what we mean to each other and to others. In April of 2022, I had lunch with Father David at Southern Market, and over plates of Moroccan chicken, he held forth on what he saw as the spiritual future of St. James, the significance of this moment for the church in Lancaster and within the Episcopal Church. I remember thinking at the time of a T-shirt I have at home that has the Latin inscription, Nullium prandium gratuitum est. There is no free lunch. I left the lunch having agreed in principle to chair a committee that would seek to create a plan in which the spiritual and worldly future of St. James could thrive. A few weeks later, David and I discussed the committee again, and we agreed on a small, agile group. I recall asking a few basic questions to help me understand the responsibility that I had taken on. This is pretty much a transcript of our conversation. Louis. David, do you want a strategic plan or a long-range plan? David, after a short pause. Yes. Okay. Is this plan meant to look at a strategic future that includes the library property or that doesn't include the library property? David, no pause whatsoever. Yes. Finally, David, are you thinking a 1 year or a 3 year time frame for the plan? Quickly, yes. With all of my questions answered, I then set off to recruit this excellent committee. Fortunately, the committee included Senior Warden Bernadette Gardner, whose matter-of-fact request for the plan was a perfect counterpoint to David. Louis, we need a plan that leads to a balanced budget. Full stop. Simple, not easy. A pragmatic plan for the next 3 years that will address a small but potentially growing budget deficit, a vision for the spiritual greatness of St. James, and a plan for growth in membership at a time when churches everywhere are seeing declining numbers of attendees. Simple, not easy. So the committee was formed. We met every other week for a year, primarily in person. Each of us had assignments in areas of special expertise. We consulted with clergy. We read carefully and discussed the interviews that had taken place in 2022 with dozens of congregants. We studied the comprehensive plan for the city of Lancaster. All of us brought questions to the table and ideas to explore. Not once did I hear, "We tried that and it didn't work." Although Nicolette Norris did carefully pull us away from some rabbit holes that we could have gone down. We sent messages to our then ailing and beloved rector. "We got this, David." The plan you can read on the website has been presented to vestry twice, once as a preliminary directional document, the second time as a nearly finished draft, beautifully written and edited by Drew Hermeling. The plan meets Father David's soaring expectations and Bernadette's bottom line strictures. There are several foundational elements. The first is the recognition of the power of the worship service itself. That our worship be accessible, inclusive, and inspiring. That our services continue to be treated with meticulous care, accompanied by beautifully produced music, assisted by an evolving and essential mastery of digital technology, and containing homilies that invite all to seek and to practice a profound and generous faith. A second foundational element is the care for our beautiful historic campus. You will find in Marianne Murata's and John Hershey's work a comprehensive and carefully planned design for the maintenance and long-term improvement of the historic campus, in line with planning for the city of Lancaster. An historic campus requires vigilance and prioritization, and funding that prevents serious and expensive deferred maintenance. We learned that our current funding formula for the physical plan is neither adequate to our needs for the physical plan, nor fully sustainable, as it depends on our endowment to a greater extent than advisable. A new planning formula looks out several years, and you can see that spreadsheet in the appendix. With it, there is a new funding formula, now including an element that is part of St. James's experience, but not its planning. That is the development of a project list that congregants with a special interest in the campus might help with through gifts outside annual regular contributions. One advantage of belonging to a 279-year-old church is that you never have to begin from scratch, from a blank page. There is a consistent line of long-range plans at St. James, and considerable work has been done by Andy Woolworth, John Walker, and other previous long-range planning committees, and most recently by Rob Bowman and the 2022 vestry. We took the excellent work that the 2022 vestry committees had done, with then members Ginger Robinson and Kit Slough and Jean Clark, and the work that they'd done on membership and ministry, and used it as the foundation for the work we were charged with doing. The most important takeaway from Rob's committee was a new way of thinking about our work, which I'd like to share with you. The 2022 vestry had taken Jim Collins's Good to Great as their text and concluded that St. James cannot be merely a good church. That isn't enough. We have to be great. That is, in fact, our brand, what we're known for and valued for. In Collins's words, greatness delivers superior performance and a distinctive impact over a sustained long period of time. We have to expect more of ourselves because we have more to offer to each other and the world. If we are in a competition, it is with good enough. On the other hand, and importantly, that means we have to take responsibility for our own future. We are both the producers and the beneficiaries of that greatness. We can measure one aspect of greatness, which is quantitative, more members, and another that is qualitative, more deeply engaged and mission-aligned members. That brings me to one of two concepts that guided our discussions and that guide the implementation of the plan. The first is the St. James flywheel, which you have an illustration of in your handout. So at the top of the wheel is the creation of incredible spiritual encounters, worship, prayer, special events, the marvelous variety of urban well. Spiritual encounters that are open to all, that are consistent with our mission, authentic to St. James, and done with excellence. As the wheel turns, the emphasis on we as creators and sponsors becomes a they, an emphasis on participants, new contributors, an emphasis on a self-sustaining and growing circle that can be continually assessed, revised, and expanded. The expansion of the circle then moves to the deepening engagement of those who make up the circle, and so on as it continues. At the center of this circle is the mission of St. James. Jean Clark will discuss how Vestry will use the flywheel as a tool for performance assessment, strengthening planning and implementation, and even for budget planning. By the way, for those who might wonder, urban well programs make a small profit in addition to their flywheel effects as depicted here. A related point for the committee was to acknowledge that a small staff, even one as dedicated as ours, cannot support ever-expanding programming. This means we must put a premium on planning ahead, far ahead, on promoting more visibly the programs we do, and on saying no to programs that are more marginal in their appeal. No, not never means we keep that idea, but do not act upon it until we are ready and the appeal is broadened. It also means that alignment with mission should also include alignment with Lancaster and the many activities and events sponsored by other institutions in the city. Personas. A second concept that guided the plan is that of personas. As I said, we benefited from the dozens of interviews conducted by the 2022 membership committee. But looking ahead, we had to ask the question, where will we find new members? How can we think more purposefully about the congregation we have and the potential congregation we're seeking? Carrie Bolton responded to those questions with a question of her own. Why don't we borrow a process from marketing? We could create a set of personas that respond to the demographics of Lancaster City and Lancaster County. That is, that can help us answer the question, among what demographic groups is there the greatest likelihood that St. James could grow? So we looked at the projections of Lancaster EDC, the Economic Development Council, and of the state and city, and we came up with the group you see on the screen. Each of these personas represents a demographic group. If you recognize any of these people, you should check your vision because these are generic photographs that we have licensed. I initially thought I did see someone I know. And they are meant to represent a demographic group around which we could coalesce our thinking about what their needs might be, what the threshold that might bring them, how high the threshold is that might bring them to St. James, and what we can do to lower that threshold so they come and deeply engage in our worship. Donna, married mother of two. Her worship must be convenient, time is the resource that she and her husband are so need to be so careful about. Dean, a professional who lives in the city with his husband and their two children. They want an inclusive worship, but they want more than worship. They want a congregation that is deeply connected to things that they value as well, including the environment. Barb and David, empty nesters. For the first time in their married lives, their children are away somewhere. And they have more time. And they want to use it meaningfully. Stephen, an active retiree who makes the who wants to give back, but in efficient and meaningful community building ways. And Laura, an older retiree, 80 plus, who's still very active, but who has mobility issues and physically has some constraints that her place of worship must be able to address so that she can enjoy the benefits of worshiping with others. These are the 5 demographic groups, and you can hear in them the development of the city of Lancaster, the county of Lancaster, and if you would read through the website, you can see how we addressed through the flywheel the needs and the mindset of each of these groups. We don't claim to have gotten it just right, but we do claim to have gotten close. And there are other groups that we can look at over time. The long-range plan calls for the formation of a membership discipleship committee of vestry that will take up the questions posed by the personas. We need to outline the recommendations we've made, among them the development of targeted marketing materials, strengthening of existing efforts such as ushers, and new strategies to meet new developments, real estate developments in and around the city, such as Mosaic. Budget and philanthropy. The plan has exceptional transparency on the budget of St. James. Mike Schmid created a budget model that incorporates a set of realistic and achievable assumptions for the next 3 years. The assumptions include a factor for wage increases, for increased regular contributions, for endowment spending and other expenses. A key takeaway is that new members of St. James may not automatically or instantly become contributing members, but importantly, neither do they add new expenses to St. James until they become contributing members. Among the long-range planning committee recommendations is that we can and need to be purposeful about communicating the finances of St. James, intentional about asking the congregation for increased contributions when we need them, mindful that the great percentage of our costs are related to people, and disciplined in only asking clergy and staff to be involved in the highest and best use of their time and our mission. To that end, we recommend that vestry form a membership discipleship committee that is specifically charged with advising on philanthropy and its increased role in our financial structure. Father Glenn's letter on time, talent, and treasure is a guiding text for the new vestry committee. So in summary, there you have it. A new articulation of our mission and a broad vision of meaningful work ahead. A renewed commitment to our foundations. 2 new committees meant to strengthen our membership and our financial foundations. 2 new concepts that can frame the work of vestry and of the committees. And I would like to emphasize that St. James is and has always been us. It is our shared purpose, our shared actions, our shared responsibility. The plan will work, indeed is already working. If we all get behind it as our plan, our intention, our mission. And now, Jean, we'll talk about the work ahead.
Thank you, Lewis. So good morning, everyone. My name's Gene Clark, and I'm not actually senior warden yet. When does that happen? Annual meeting?
The end of the annual meeting.
So I'm sitting here thinking how eloquently Father David and Lewis have spoken, and I thought I am not nearly as prepared with my eloquent remarks. And I said, I'm not even senior warden yet. So, I did want to share just kind of where my head's at, that being said, as to how I'm thinking about what Vestry can do to advance this plan. In my mind, there's a great book that I read in my business life a couple years ago called Vision, Alignment, and Execution, VAE. It's like a textbook. It's not that fun to read, but the concept is basically you have vision and then you create alignment around that and then you execute on it. If you have a vision, but you don't properly align and execute, it's just delusional. If you align and execute on something that's not a very compelling vision, it's boring and not impactful. So the key of VAE is doing it all together. What I love about the long range plan and the work that Lewis just reviewed is that that's our vision, right? And I know all of you, I mean, if you're like me, I'm here because I saw a compelling vision at St. James when Christy and I decided to join here in 2016 or so. You know, we saw the vision, we thought it was compelling, we wanted to be a part of it. And so I think the work for Vestry in implementing this plan really comes down to the alignment and execution part. We luckily don't have to think about the vision part because Father David has a vision. Lewis and the committee has put it into a great long-range plan form. And now I think Vestry's job is to just figure out how do we align and execute this vision that's put together. So in my mind, I guess there's two things that I'm mulling right now. This will be my third year on Vestry that I'm starting. And every month Vestry looks at the budget. You know, the finances for the month, how's the budget performing to expected actual, all that. Obviously, we'll continue to do that. But what I'd love to see us develop is a list of metrics and things that we can measure built around the flywheel, particularly those first 3 or 4 parts, the creating incredible spiritual encounters, welcoming people into them. What are the things we can measure that help us understand, are we actually welcoming people into them, right? And so I think it's everything from what is our Sunday morning attendance to how many kids were there in Children's Chapel, to how many people attended the new member meeting session. There's so many things that we can be measuring. In a lot of cases, we actually already are measuring this, the staff is, but I would like to see Vestry look at that every single month with equal importance, if not even more importance, arguably, to the budget itself. Because I think we can all understand that if those numbers are going in the right direction, good things will follow with the budget. It's hard for it not to, right? And so I think the first thing we'll be looking at is that flywheel and figuring out what are the key things we can measure. And then how do we report on that with discipline every single month in Vestry meetings to talk about how are those measurables going? Why are they going up or down? What are we going to do about it? And so that's really front of mind for me. And then I think the second part is that the execution of the little things that are going to advance the flywheel. And as I was sitting here, the one thing I thought about from the last year, how many people noticed the new handrails that are at the front of the altar? I was actually hoping very few, like not that many of you raise your hands. And my thought was like, that's the point. There's new handrails at the front of the altar that help. Is it Laura, the 80-year-old fake person? Yeah. So Laura has mobility issues. And if she wants to participate in the service and maybe read from the lectern, she's not getting up there, you know? And so those handrails that have been installed in the last 6 months are able to get her up there in a way that she wasn't able to before. And the fact that nobody really noticed that they were installed, that's how important those little tiny things are that we need to do as a parish to move that flywheel forward. So my hope would be that we can have 100 of things like that happening next year, where the majority of them will go unnoticed. But when you collectively add them together, that's where it's like, wow, look at where we've gone. And so I just think of those handrails as a case in point. If we can do things like that, replicated dozens and dozens and dozens of times, spread throughout the flywheel in time, if we keep doing that with disciplined intention and time, we'll really get that flywheel moving. And so that's kind of what I picture Vestry focusing on in the year ahead and hopefully for years ahead.
Great.
Okay.
That is evidence of just what we have in the leadership of the laity of this parish, and where it is that in this month, as we move to the annual meeting, we will have the opportunity to deepen, to ask questions, to expand our horizon, and develop in each of you that calling of yours in Christ, in this community, to make that engagement and traction in your personal spiritual growth possible. There may be some questions that you have that you want to ask of those who are here, or that we can flag up and hold and address in the annual meeting on the 28th of January, that last Sunday of the month, when our bylaws and constitution has us always with that annual meeting. But are there questions or reflections that you have at this time that would be helpful? Satawa, yes. Let me and all of us with 100 or more of us gathered together thank Satawa for all of the work that she does Sunday by Sunday. As we talk about lay leadership and community bridges and formation, the work that Satawa does in welcoming vulnerable groups and people, in ensuring that she is our face of welcome and hospitality, and that all of those small things that we need to keep doing to be a hospitable community are underway. She is our first line of eyes and ears for that. So thank you so much, Satawa.
So what I wanted to talk about is in line with what you've said, and
I can't hear you.
Try.
is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm an international student, and so I'm sort of a floater. And so I'd like to add that among the personals, because there are groups of people who are not from Lancaster, may not be here for a long time, but as Father David said, we have a lot to contribute to this community. And I consider St. James to be my family. And when, I think, Chris, when you talked about looking at the Lancaster demographics, and Lancaster is known as a welcoming city. So why doesn't St. James also become a welcoming church and have floaters? Okay, floaters is not the right name for that, but for people who are here for a short time but can still contribute. And I would say, let us have more than just the one-off dinners that we have, but have more events that make us feel at home, that everybody feels that, yes, I can stand up and do things the way Sitara is. But then, yeah, that's just my question and addition to our bit.
Brilliant. More reflections and opportunities to continue to deepen our reflections now, as you may have them. You don't all have to come up and be as articulate.
The library.
Thank you, Patsy, the library. An exciting opportunity for us, but one that is still in its infancy. Jean, is there anything you'd like to add to that as we take those first steps towards the work that the library is an opportunity for us in? And I should do, one of the things that I was taught is to ask first, why is that important to you?
Because, okay.
Isn't that a really important eliciting question? I can think of 5 things that's important to me about that question, but they may not be any of those that are interested or important to you.
Well, for one reason,
the parking lot, like this morning, for those of us who are so happy to have the guide rails to the altar, a parking lot that is really close and that you can park freely, that's one thing. But the library, I've got things in mind that are church related, like, spiritual direction, or a library that is complete, that maybe just short like the Franciscans or some of those in order right beside the church that can work in the community, that's has a way to go, and so that it stays in the prayer and directed to God. That's the center of that round circle, and that's where we want to go. Let's do it that way. It might cost a lot too.
I would just say, as one of the three investors in the library, the idea behind that was if we could secure it and take it off the market, because it would have been sold to any number of developers in a second. By taking it off the market, it now gives St. James the luxury of taking literally years to figure out what, if anything, it wants to do with that property, because there is 3 million ideas.
Yeah.
And so I think what we're trying to do is just create this buffer of space so that the church can take literally as much time, and it's years, it's not months, to figure out what do we do with that property. In the meantime, the investment group is looking to do something with the building to just basically stabilize it from a cash flow standpoint. And so there will be a short-term use, and that'll buy as much time as St. James needs to figure out what that long-term plan is. Speaking from a vestry standpoint, I would add that when I look at the long-range plan and questions like the library come up and like waiting for somebody to ask about the warehouse, what I think about that is we really have to start with thinking about our ministries and programs. And what do the ministries and programs, what's the vision for where that's going? Because that really then informs what our staffing design has to look like. And then we figure out what the physical plant has to look like. And so I think it's dangerous if we think about the physical plant first and then think about worship and staff and all that. It really starts with what's the future of our ministries and programs? What does the staff look like to support that? And then, oh, by the way, what's the physical plant needed to support that? So from a vestry standpoint and tying in the long range plan, that's really what our work will be.
As a visual artist in a city of visual artists, there are several striations of my question here. What, if anything, does the vision include about visual arts and their outreach into the community, their liturgical significance, and as a sort of my experience both in the north of the country and Massachusetts is often the artistic community is completely ignored by the church. I hate to say this, but it is. It's a difficult nut to crack sometimes. So I'm wondering how the visual arts, and not just painting, drama, the whole thing. Is a wonderful music ministry. We have a wonderful music ministry. But I was wondering about visual arts and also an outreach into liturgy and even into the urban well with. That's it. That's my question. There we are.
A great question, and came with it why that's important to you as an artist, Christian, and deacon of the church. This is work that we will continue to unfold. The arts is one of the brandings of our community, including the leaders of education. It's not a coincidence that we have so many educators here at St. James or so many artists. And so your ability to input into that engagement, to offer your reflections both to liturgy and to renewal of the buildings and grounds through the arts will be really important, Gay. And I'll look forward to working with you, those who want to connect with Gay, to continue to percolate on where focused activities could be done. That reading of yours of the strategic plan and that flywheel to see precisely where, or at least try to map out how the impact and alignments get made. That's going to be really important for us. And then with Father Glenn, Mother Shana, me, and others, we will be able to, members of vestry, we will be able to draw that together and see what do we need to make that a more lively engagement by the end of the year, as well as those new personas, further personas that we need to address, as Sitawa was saying.
The counseling center?
Patsy keeps pointing at me and telling me there's not a concept. I am not signing up for that. What a great idea.
That's vision.
Yeah.
That's not alignment. I got that far in genes. We'll go on. I saw another hand raised. Tim.
My question is, the demographics, I mean, a lot of that demographics here in the city is this Hispanic population. And I was thinking, I can see a lot of Hispanic churches popping up all over the county here. Have you ever given any thought of starting like this billing Hispanic service in Spanish?
It's a great question. For those who couldn't hear, Tim was asking about Hispanic population, Latino life and culture and representation in the city, and how it is that St. James can be more engaged with and in it. And I'm pleased to say that just to Tim's left is a Saturday night mass example of how it is that the Adrian Garcia Band was one way of how we authentically connect with from within the Latino culture to be a place that, as Mother Shana says, it's amazing how much in Lancaster we have our own social geography and live it in isolation from each other. That's socioeconomic, that is geographical, that is about cars, that is about class, that is also about race, and that is also about changing dynamics in our country. And St. James needs to be at the forefront of that because of where we are in the city, and because, more importantly, it's where Jesus Christ already is, and the power of the Holy Spirit is seen most profoundly. So that is an excitement. The personas, I think, were what was smart about the personas was they were focused on who is already coming. That we, as they say, are great at attracting people to St. James. Our retention rate is less good. And so how do we be sure that those people who make the most frightening journey imaginable, I often say it's like a guy going to get a facial in a beauty salon, somebody who goes to a church that's new for the first time, especially somebody who's single coming to church for the first time, is carrying an awful lot of baggage and has either very high or very low expectations of what they're going to encounter. And we have to get it right as often as possible, as quickly as possible for them. Not for us. That's a really hard, tricky thing to do. So that wholesale reflection on being a welcoming campus and a place of inclusion is fortunately in the foundation of our work laid by the vestry in 2022, I believe, when we had our inclusion statement that gives us a good policy grounding and our work as we come forward now. So we'll continue to work on that. Tim, I want you to continue to raise it up. Who Sitawa is and her own sensitivity as a Millersville student, as somebody who, with Church World Service as well, our relationships with them are going to, I hope, train us build our muscles and our capacity to see and make those connections better. We've got in 2 weeks through 3 weeks' time, the next 2 Sundays, we'll be meeting those members who are standing for vestry so that you can get to know them better. One of the best things about standing for vestry is you just get to make some new friends. Everybody can start remembering your name. As well as that, there is all the people who stand have a much deeper understanding of St. James. And then those who are elected, of course, have a 3-year cycle of responsibility. So that's really important. I do want you to keep coming back online and in person for these next 3 weeks and for our annual meeting. I think we are at a time. Crystal, I'd love it if you could email your question or reflection. Likewise, all the rest of you, Andrew.
I was just going to say, before the church starts at 10:30, as somebody who's been a regular visitor, a regular attendee for the last year, just thank you. I think it's important to end with the words thank you, because so many of you that are up here, I find inspiring. So thank you to Father David. Thank you to the members that were a part of the committee. And thank you to many people who are sitting here who are involved in so many ministries at St. James that have had an impact on me over the last year. So thank you.
Great, very nice. I hope those on Zoom were able also to hear Andrew and the tribute of all of the Atkinson family who have jumped in with both feet in really rich and wonderful ways, including sweet and dear pastoral care for me in many notes and kindnesses as well as prayers. So that is a perfect note to end on, the thank you of somebody who has begun to come and found a renewing energy in the life of the Holy Spirit in their life and in ours together for the sake of the world. With that, we will carry on to continue the celebration of the Feast of the Baptism of Christ and remember our own baptism and the boldness of Christian life and witness that it calls us to. Thank you very much to all of you who came online in this online community church and in person this day, and all who will be reviewing it in the days to come. Make sure your friends know that this is online, is available, and like all the forums, can be viewed asynchronously as well as synchronously. With that, God speed you and keep your steps steady.